Now, as we said in our first study, we're going now to put both feet in this chapter and walk through, having very quickly identified the two dragons. We're going to provide evidence that this is in fact how this should be interpreted, that the pagan dragon then merges into the Christian dragon. And we're going to see how, why, and when this happened. And also having a look at these three women and how they appear in this chapter. Now, we made the point in our study previously that the scene is set for the pagan dragon, whoever it is, whether it's Licinius or Maximin, to draw the third part of the stars of heaven. We now have three emperors in place, 3/3 of the pagan Roman Empire. And so we did look at those pagan dragons there, and you coloured in, of course, the blue there. Some of you did. Someone mentioned to me, can we have a copy of the slide so that we can do this little activity? And the answer is absolutely. If anyone's got a USB, well, you don't use USBs anymore. Go through Brother Gordon and he will give you all of these slides if you so desire. Now, brothers and sisters, young people, we have here in Revelation chapter 12, the beginning of the story, the beginning of the drama, and we have here, reading in verse 5, these words, and she brought forth a man-child. And of course, in verse 7, we know oh so well, this is Michael, he who, like God, he's a man-child, but he's her child, as we would know. And he was born, as we said before, in 312 AD. While Constantine is streaming down from York in England, coming down to beat Maxentius, because he knew if he didn't get Maxentius, Maxentius would have gotten him. So as Constantine is streaming down from York in England to take on Maxentius, he is in the womb of his mother. And when he's born politically in 312, like all newborn babies, he does not yet know who his mother is. So he looks around and he says, a year goes by and there's all these different sects, all vying and jostling for his support. Pick me, pick me. And 1 year goes by, 2 years go by, 3 years go by. And at AD 312, 13, 14, 15, he goes, you, the Catholic sect, you I will adorn with the sun. You, I will put the moon under your feet and make you the universal religion. You have victory over the pagan Roman world with the 12 stars. So in 315, he now finds out who his mum is. Born in 312, aligns himself with his mother in 315. So, brothers and sisters, we then read that this is Michael in verse 7. And of course, in the Greek, we know, many of us, it is he who is like God. But in the Greek, it is not Michael, it is ho Michael. In the Greek, it is the Michael. It's the he who like God for this situation. And he would be a type of Christ. Because, brothers and sisters, the he who like God for this situation, just like God raised up people, he raised up him for this situation. God raised up Nebuchadnezzar. God raised up Cyrus. God raised up Alexander. God raised up Napoleon. Now God raises up this man. A type of Christ. He's going to remove the dragon, and so will Christ in Revelation 20. He's going to rule the world with a rod of iron, this Michael, and so will Jesus Christ. And when Jesus Christ has ruled the world with a rod of iron and cast out the dragon or bound the dragon, there will be peace in the world through the kingdom. Just like we read in Revelation 8 and verse 1, there was silence. Dragon cast out, Michael ruling the world with a rod of iron, silence and peace. Very typical of the greater he who like God, who is yet to come. He is the Michael God raised up for this situation. And then you read this verse here, brothers and sisters. You read this verse here in verse 5. And she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all the nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. What does that mean? This child, this Michael, was caught up to God and to his throne. Well, brothers and sisters and young people, This idea of being caught up in the Greek means to be lifted up forcibly. That's as it in the Greek. And therefore the battles of force by Constantine's army allowed the inevitable lifting up to God. Oh, this is a very, very apt and appropriate quotation in this context, is it not? Come with me, if you will, to Romans and chapter 13. Lifted up to God, forcibly lifted up to the wars that he would engage in. Well, how appropriate is this quotation in Romans and chapter 13 and verse 1? Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. That was God's throne. He ordained that and lifted this man up to his throne. His power ordained by him. So that's the way in which this is used. Lifted up forcibly by God, and as we read that verse there, he was caught up unto God to God's throne. All thrones are God's, and this one was in fact also God's throne. So brothers and sisters, we then come to this verse here. Now this is where it starts to become a little challenging. We come to this verse here and we read, now look at this. This is verse 4. And we're looking at the latter end, the second part of verse 4. Then we're going to go back and we're going to look at the first part of verse 4. So what you've got here is you've got the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. We made the point that Constantine was born in 312. Now, you could legitimately put these emperors in front of that verse. And Galerius, the dragon, stood before the woman. In 311, Galerius was absolutely incensed that Constantine should be given the supremacy of an emperor. No, I don't want a Christian, Constantine being pro-Christian. No. And so Galerius was determined to hunt him down and to kill him. He was the dragon ready to devour the child as soon as the opportunity arose. Likewise, Maxentius. When Constantine came down to Milvian Bridge, 14 k's, 14 kilometres outside of Rome, Maxentius was determined to slay this man-child before, in this instance, he was born. And then it swings the drama to the final of these characters in this particular play. This is Licinius. Licinius, after Constantine was born, now takes the major stage. Licinius, the dragon, is going to stand before the woman and devour him as soon as he is born. So, brothers and sisters, his tale, through the third part of the stars of heaven. We have three emperors, as we've been saying as we've been walking through. Now, there is the empire, divided into three sections. Constantine has been born. He now is ruler of the West. There are two pagan emperors in the East. Licinius, Constantine's brother-in-law, he flip-flopped. Christian, pagan, Christian, pagan. And in the end, he became pagan through and through. And Licinius looked across there with his pagan, lustful eyes and said, you know, I wouldn't mind that. And then he looks across here to the east and goes, I wouldn't mind that either. So Licinius looks to this 1/3 and says, I think I'll take that. I think I'll use my great tail and I'll grab my pagan tail and I'll cast the stars to the earth. Well, Maximin provoked him. Maximin provoked Licinius to war. But Maximin died in the process. And in came Licinius and drew 1/3 of the stars of heaven, the Roman heaven, and cast them to the earth. How are we going there with that screen? Is that really, really, really super bright with the sun shining? Is it all good for you? I'm totally and absolutely astounded. Sun is shining through those windows. I almost jumped off the platform, ran over to the window. I really did need to do that. Have a look outside and see that the sun is shining. Really nice. So, brothers and sisters, here is Licinius. He's now drawn 1/3 of the stars and cast them to the earth. Now that is a fulfillment of that verse. But there's another fulfillment of that little expression. He drew the third part of the stars of heaven and cast them to the earth. It's kind of got two fulfillments in this chapter. That's one of them. Okay? Now, the battle lines are drawn. Licinius commands these 2/3. Constantine, 1. So the battle lines are drawn. We now have two combatants in this chapter. We have Constantine and we have Licinius. Now, brothers and sisters, this now would be battle after battle until AD 324, Revelation 8, verse 1, until there will be silence in heaven for about the space of a month. And this is the great earthquake of Revelation 6, the first of those three great earthquakes. I want you to note this. Two combatants. I want you to note verse 89 and verse 12, 13. This gets a bit tricky. Just try and see if we can get our head around this. Licinius has drawn 1/3, beaten Maximin. Licinius the pagan. Now look at verse 8 and 9 of Revelation 12. For verse 7, for context, there was war in heaven. Constantine and his army fought against Licinius and his army. And verse 8, and prevailed not, did Licinius, neither was there place found any more in the Roman heavens. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Brothers and sisters and young people, he was cast out, but he wasn't obliterated. Because when you read verse 12 and 13, you read in verse 12, therefore rejoice ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the dragon or the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knows that he hath but a short time. And then you read verse 13, and when Licinius saw that he was cast down to the earth, what did he do? He persecuted the woman. He's still running around. He's been dealt with, but he's still running around doing some nasty things. What happened, brothers and sisters, was this. War after war after war with Constantine and Licinius. In the end, Constantine said, listen, behave yourself. I'm going to allocate you, Licinius, 1/3 of the empire. Get over there and behave yourself. Well, Licinius was over there in this 1/3, the area that Maximin had previously occupied. And here's Licinius, knowing he's got a short time left. He's getting very upset. And what he's doing, he's now going to thrash his great big pagan tail and do something here now. Having already cleared out Maximin with that 1/3, now he's going to do something else. He knows he's got a short time and he's going to persecute the woman. And he's in this section here, and there's all these Christians. There's these churches. And so he runs around looting the churches, getting this wealth, and he's drumming up another army, a great army, to go and have a final battle with Constantine. And he's thrashing around there, knowing in that verse he has but a short time, and now he's going to persecute the woman by looting the churches, getting the money. And now, brothers and sisters and young people, he's ready to go to war. So twice he thrashed his tail. Once he got rid of Maximin. Secondly, he's knocking off the Christians inside that area and getting rid of them. Now he's got the money, and this is what we read. He gets his men together, and he says to them, friends and fellow warriors, says Licinius, assembled with all his pagan gods, these are the gods of our ancestors, whom, received from our earliest predecessors as objects of worship, we honour them. But, says Licinius, He who commands the army, that is my brother-in-law Constantine, that is drawn up against us, having adopted an atheistic opinion, he calls his brother an atheist. He says, my brother is an atheist. He's adopted an atheistic opinion. My brother-in-law violates the customs of the fathers. My brother-in-law Constantine venerates a god from abroad, I know not whence. And my brother-in-law Constantine disgraces his troops with his ignominious standard, the high road, trusting in which he arms not so much against us as against the gods whom he offends. So Licinius says, if the foreign god whom we now deride should appear the mightiest, we must acknowledge and honour him and bid farewell to these to whom we have vainly lit candles, waxed tapers. And so off he goes to war. And he's beaten by Constantine. And there, brothers and sisters, is a coin. And there is that ignominious standard that Licinius spoke about, the high road. And there is a serpent under the foot of Constantine, and there is Constantine's name. And Constantine, in his letter to Eusebius, look at the words. That dragon, Constantine said, how do you think our brethren and sisters did? Our brethren and sisters were living here, living in this environment. And our brethren and sisters who lived prior to this AD 324, read this letter and their hearts would have raced with enthusiasm, seeing the fulfillment of Bible prophecy in Revelation 12. We look way back and go, a bunch of Roman history. They were thrilled at Bible prophecy. That dragon, said Constantine, having been disposed from the governance of affairs by God's providence, but now, pardon me, but now that liberty, right, but now that liberty is restored, and that dragon driven from the administration of public affairs by the providence of the supreme deity. Oh, and by the way, says Constantine, and our instrumentality, we trust that all can see the efficacy of the divine power that was written by Constantine. Plucked straight out of Revelation 12. Well, brothers and sisters, look at this. Here's a verse in verse 10. Now, young people, don't stumble over this one. Hang on, let me just throw that over there. Let me just open this up, or you have a little mental break. Okay? Don't often do this. I don't often open up lollies in front of an audience. But you're English, and you'll understand the need for us colonialists. All right, brothers and sisters, look at this. In Revelation 12 and verse 10. Constantine's beat the dragon. Now, let's read verse 10 together of Revelation chapter 12. And I heard a loud voice saying, now is come salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before God day and night. These brothers and sisters are the Catholics. These are those that went to war with Constantine. These are the Laodicean Christadelphians, as Brother Thomas refers to them in Eureka. These are saying the kingdom of God is on earth. So along with this victory over paganism came the error in doctrine, thinking God's kingdom was there. We don't believe that. Look at this, brothers and sisters. Lactantius wrote this: let us celebrate the triumph of God with gladness. Let us commemorate God's victory with praise. Let us make mention in our prayers day and night of the peace which after 10 years of persecution he has conferred upon his people. What an astounding thing that we can look back and see those events fulfilled. absolutely accurate. Well, brothers and sisters, now Constantine, the mother whom he discovered some 3 years later. Now look at this. We mentioned earlier on that there are 2 dragons in this chapter, the pagan dragon and the Christian dragon. Look at historically how we justify the morphing from a pagan accuser of our brethren and sisters to a Christian accuser. Have a look at this abridged comment from Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. He says this: the Edict of Milan, 313 AD, when Constantine, after beating Maxentius at Milvian Bridge, he got together with his brother-in-law in 313 and they drafted up a charter of toleration, religious freedom. The Edict of Milan, the great charter of toleration, has confirmed to each individual of the Roman world the privilege of choosing and professing his own religion. But this inestimable privilege was soon violated with the knowledge of truth. So Gibbon calls Constantine's religion, placing the moon under this woman's feet, truth. So with the knowledge of truth, the Emperor Constantine imbibed the maxims of persecution. He became the dragon. And the sects which descended from the Catholic Church were afflicted and oppressed by the triumph of the apostate woman, my mother, Constantine finally discovered. I will clothe you with the sun and put the moon under your feet. What an amazing thing, brothers and sisters. And so this apostate religion, these maxims of persecution were about to be inflicted on anyone who dissented from the now universal church. Well, here they are. Here are the dissenters from the universal church, and they would be the 2 other women in this chapter. So here we got, like we had with the 2 dragons, here we've now got in Revelation 12, the truth gone bad. So Revelation 12 there, brothers and sisters, we've now got a woman. So you've got 3 women in this chapter. So if you want to get out your little colouring in pencils if you so desire and colour these in, this is the Catholic woman. This is the truth gone bad. So for those that don't want to do the little activity, you can just have a little mental break. All good with that? The one down there, verses 1 and 2. And we come to here, and we have verse 4 and verse 5. 3 women. It's important that we know who they are. So, pardon me, so verses 4 through 5, and the final one is that one tucked up there, verse 13. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 little colours in there to identify the Catholic woman. Well, there was now a religious community that turned around and said, what have we to do with politics? What have we to do with the courts of Constantine? This is not what Christ said we should engage in. We are not having anything to do with this new state politically involved religion called Catholicism. And therefore, flick through there, flick through there, flick through there, and therefore we have a woman running away. This woman that now runs away, but she's not really running away. She is another religious group who say we'll have nothing to do with the way in which the structure is set up. And Constantine said to these heretics, shape up or ship out. And when it says there that the woman fled into the wilderness, what it really means, brothers and sisters and young people, is this religious, protesting, woman was placed in a wilderness state. She was exiled from the new universal religion. Constantine said, you are cut off from society. You will have no access to anything. She was placed in a wilderness state as she stood up protesting against this apostate woman. And so she runs away. She's given 2 wings of the great eagle. She's given the extremities of the empire to be nourished and to flee. Now, you know, brothers and sisters, the third woman is there. So we've got Protestants, if you want. And here, the dragon was wroth with this Protestant woman and went and made war with not only this woman, but the remnant of her seed. Now, I want you to note this verse because this does show us the differentiation between the Protestant religious group and mixed up with them were our brothers and sisters, whom, as far as Constantine was concerned, they were all just heretics. But the Christadelphians were heretics of the heretics. Now, go with me, if you will, to Revelation 2 and verse 24. This same Greek word, this Greek word here, remnant, is used 8 times in the Apocalypse. 8 times. This is the first time it's used. Look at the context. Revelation 2 and verse 24. This is the ecclesia of Thyatira. And we read in verse 24 of Revelation 2 these words. But unto you I say, and unto, now here's the word, the rest. This is the first time that word is used in the Apocalypse. The rest, the remnant of her seed, are the brothers and sisters. So unto you I say, in Thyatira, as many as have not this doctrine, it's where we are in chapter 12. It's a matter of doctrine, brothers and sisters. And have not known the depths of Satan. This is a Christian Satan that we're dealing with, a Christian adversary in Constantine. Or cast your eye up to verse 20 of chapter 2. Notwithstanding, I have a few things against thee, because thou sufferest that woman. We're in the context of 3 women in chapter 12. Jezebel, who calls herself a prophetess, to teach and to seduce my servants. Listen to this. To commit fornication. This Catholic woman is pregnant. She has committed spiritual fornication. So the first time that word is used, all those words flow out, contextualizing it into Revelation chapter 12. So we have 3 women, brothers and sisters. And so this woman, this protesting woman, among whom were our brothers and sisters, as another woman, fled or were placed in a wilderness state, and they would remain so, witnessing against Roman Catholicism for 1,260 years. You had 312, 1,260 years, and we're not going into this chapter. We did this at the Bible school. 1572, Revelation 11 and verse 3. So if you want to put a cross-reference there, when this woman would cease witnessing and begin to be killed, your cross-reference is from Revelation 12 verse 14 into Revelation 11 and verse 3. That's all we can say about that at this moment. She fled. She was placed into a wilderness state. And we read now, brothers and sisters, as we pull our study to a conclusion, almost, verse 14, Revelation 12. And to this woman were given 2 wings of the great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place where she is nourished for 1,260 years. An interesting little expression locking us back to Daniel, fleeing from the face of Constantine in the first instance, his sons thereafter, and then thereafter the Catholic emperors in Constantinople. You know, brothers and sisters, she's given these 2 wings. You haven't got this cross-reference. Of course, you know Deuteronomy 28 and verse 49. Rome, as swift as the eagle flieth, Deuteronomy 28, verse 49. You know Matthew 24, where the carcass is, thither will the eagles be gathered together. You know Matthew 24, the carcass is the rotting, polluting commonwealth of Judah. And in Matthew 24, the eagles are the Roman army, the lightning out of the east under Titus, as they took Jerusalem. So there's two excellent quotations to show to us we're talking about the Roman Empire, the two wings of the great eagle. And there, through history, were those protesting, that protesting woman against Rome. In the first instance, with Constantine, the woman that was placed into a wilderness state in 312, 13, 14, 15 and thereafter were the Donatists of North Africa. Now look at this as we finish. What an amazing thing in the Bible is. How much detail do we need to tremble at this book? Honestly, brothers and sisters. Coming back to Revelation 12 and verse 15. We read this. Here's a protesting woman, the Donatists in the first instance, religious, protesting against Constantine, placed into a wilderness state. Now look at verse 15 of chapter 12. And the serpent, Constantine, the Christian dragon, cast out of his mouth water as a flood, judgment. And we know that's judgment because Isaiah 8 and verse 7 and Jeremiah 46 verse 7 through 8. Judgment, the word flood, the idea of a flood is judgment. So Constantine is going to judge this protesting woman, among whom are our brothers and sisters, to carry the woman away. And he sends the flood that she might be carried away of the flood. But you then read in verse 16 of Revelation 12, but the earth opened its mouth to swallow the flood. So there's a big opening in the ground. The earth opened its mouth to take away this effect of persecution on the Christian woman, the protesting woman, the Protestants, if you will. Who's the earth? If the Donatists are in North Africa, in the first instance, as those who were the first brothers and sisters, the Donatists were the first Christian group to stand against the state church, the first in history to stand against the state church. So here are the Donatists, they're being persecuted by this serpent, Constantine. But an earth helps the woman. Who's the earth? Anyone know? Who's the earth? What does this mean? Well, these brothers and sisters were the circumcellions of North Africa. These were a bunch of blokes out there in North Africa that were kind of like religious, but really way out there. They were so extreme. Here are the Donatists, very happy to work alongside kind of this group called the circumcellion. The idea means to roam around, to circle, to circumvent, to circumnavigate. You've got these intense political group with a bit of religion who hate Rome, and they will not be shackled to Rome. And they're walking around killing Catholics. But they read in the Bible, did these circumcellions, he that lives by the sword shall die by the sword. So instead of carrying a sword, they used to carry clubs. And they used to call these clubs Israelites. So they're walking around carrying these Israelites and killing Catholics. And they were so intense in they're like terrorists. And they wanted to go out and be martyred. They brought on, bring it on. I'm going to, and I want to die. Remind you of terrorists and extremists today. They had them back then. So the earth, God provided a buffer in order that these protesting religious witnesses, including our brothers and sisters, would not be exterminated from the earth. What an amazing thing, brothers and sisters. Now, we finish our study right now, after we read this. Here is a 4th century apocalypse student, a Donatist, one of the ones that were fled, put into a wilderness state. this gives me goosebumps. How do you reckon our brothers and sisters who are looking forward in the prophetic terms to the fulfillment of Revelation 12? Suddenly, behold, suddenly, said this Donatus, the polluted flood of the Macarian persecution burst forth from the tyrannical church of Constantine's son, King Constans, and two men, being sent to Africa from thence, to wit, Macarius and Paulus, a most horrible and cruel ecclesiastical war was proclaimed, that a Christian people like the Donatists should be compelled by naked swords of soldiers, by the standards of serpents and dragons. The standard of Revelation 12. That they should, by the blast of trumpets, unite with traitors, but traitors, trading your life to give up your belief in God's word. What an astounding thing, brothers and sisters. We can only just imagine the drama of that time. But what I want to leave you with is this. Think about your brothers and sisters in that time. Reading Revelation 12, seeing all these events being fulfilled, think about how they must have felt. And they cried unto Despotes, how long, O Lord, Despotes, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood upon the earth? And they saw that come to fruition. Pagan Rome disappeared. But in came a terrible persecutor. And that persecutor has gone on one century after another century after another century. One day, we're going to meet our brothers and sisters who saw that as prophecy. And we're going to ask them, how did they ever overcome? And they're going to turn to you. And they're going to ask you how you overcome the awful persecution that they know is the only lot for those who are in Christ. They knew nothing else. They knew nothing else. It was persecution. To live in Christ was to be persecuted and have to stand up for your... They're going to ask you at the judgment seat, how did you overcome the persecution? That's all they know. What are you going to say? Well, it was tough. The lecture and the study class went over 10 minutes. It was tough. Or there was a brother in the hall that I didn't get on with and we had bad words and I had to go and fight. It was tough. Are we going to feel ashamed, embarrassed, when we stand next to our brothers and sisters who went through that? I'm not saying we have to go through and be killed and be slain, brothers, but think about our brothers and sisters. No wonder when Christ comes, and in the chapter 14 of Revelation, where an angel stands there with a sharp sickle, ready to reap the vintage of the earth, he doesn't move. He doesn't move until another angel comes out of the altar and says, go. Who do you reckon that angel is? Who do you reckon those brothers and sisters are that come out of the altar? Those ones who knew the persecution of pagan Rome, who knew the persecution of Catholic Rome. They're the ones that are going to say, go and reap the vintage of the earth. Can't wait for that to happen, brothers and sisters. And to stand with our brothers and sisters and talk to them about the Bible class that we had about their era. What a glorious thing that will be. So thank you, brothers and sisters, for welcoming Sister Christine into your midst and for the fellowship that we have surely been shown in abundance in our brief trip that we have had thus far in the United Kingdom. May God bless us all in our journey as we wait for the return of our Lord Jesus Christ.